If we learned anything from this episode, it's that Awoshikun is a total badass. Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here, bringing you my thoughts on the most recent episode of Star Trek Discovery, Season 3, Episode 9, Terra Firma, Part 1. It's pretty exciting to get a Part 1 that we actually get the Part 2 to next week. As you know, the season premiere was That Hope Is You Part 1, and we have no idea when Part 2 is coming. It's not on the schedule for this season. Still curious about that. But we do get Terra Firma Part 2 next week, so the episode titles all make sense right now, so that's good. But I wanted to talk a bit about this episode. As usual, the first part of this video will be spoiler free. After that, I will give you a warning and get into the spoilers, which is going to happen fairly quickly because there's not a whole lot that I'm able to say about this episode without getting to spoilers. I will say this is a bit of a game changer for Discovery this season. I've really been enjoying Season 3 up until now. It's been a couple episodes, the most recent one and the one from a few weeks ago, Scavengers. I was not the biggest fan of. I had more problems with those than normally I do with the Season 3 Discovery episodes because mainly, as I've said in videos about those and podcasts I've done, the rest of the episodes this season have just been so stellar. So it's disheartening when they take a little bit of a dip, which has happened a couple times. But again, the bar is set so high this season. I'm really enjoying this. So this episode, though, I feel like it maybe sets a new bar. I'm not saying it's my favorite this season. I'm not sure yet. I've still got that new episode energy, you know, when you have just watched an episode that you really enjoy and you're just coming off of that and really loving it. So how much of that is that and how much of it is this was actually a really good episode, I'm not sure. I think a lot of it is that this was a really good episode, but let's get into it. I love this episode. I think there's a lot of really great moments for some characters, especially one character who has kind of had a bit of a journey this season that has maybe not been as compelling. I don't think it's spoilers to say that I'm talking about Georgiou. This episode focuses on Georgiou, and up until this point, she's kind of felt like just like a tacked on member of the Discovery crew, if that makes sense. Like she came with them to the future, but she feels very apart from the crew, both because of her personality and how she behaves, and simply for the fact that she's from a completely different universe, completely different background, and has a different relationship to the crew than the rest of the crew members do. I mean, they're all part of Starfleet, they all are part of the chain of command. She just feels like this kind of separate entity. This episode, however, I think has given me the first like, ooh, I'm really invested in the Georgiou storyline this season. So that's really exciting. Besides Georgiou, there's also some great scenes with other crew members, other characters, some really nice commentary on leadership, and also just little movements on some of the relationships we've got going. A lot of that is very one and done, very not really focused on, because the Georgiou storyline really takes up the bulk of this episode, but that is in here nonetheless. I don't know what else to say without getting into spoilers, so I'll just leave it by saying that this is definitely a high mark for this season. Really curious to see where things go next week. If you have not watched Terra Firma Part 1, I absolutely urge you to do so before watching the rest of this video. There are some crazy things happening in this episode that I'm still not 100% clear on, but it's really worth it to check this episode out without getting spoiled, if at all possible. But with that said, I'm getting into spoilers now, so last chance, click away if you haven't watched Terra Firma Part 1. Trust me on this. So the start of the episode, we get the return of Kovich, played by David Cronenberg. I was really hoping we'd see this character again. And again, his part of the story relates to Georgiou, as it did the first time we saw him a few episodes ago. And it seems that he has some insight into what's happening with Georgiou, because apparently when you time travel, the molecules of your body really want to be back where they originally came from. So that, time travel can kind of make you sick. Added to that, not only the time travel, of course, Georgiou has also hopped universes. And as we find out from Kovich, over the course of the last few hundred years, the Prime Universe and the Mirror Universe have split further apart, which has exacerbated what Georgiou is going through. So she's really suffering from this kind of tendency to want to be back where she originated. I really liked this explanation. I think it makes a lot of sense. You know, we've seen sort of things like this before. There's the like psychosis that the duplicate Jean-Luc Picard had in the season 2 episode TNG Times Squared, which we've never seen again. I wonder if this is kind of related to that. Again, this is just like diving into the deep canon and trying to make connections where you can. But yeah, there are a couple other characters who have crossed universes and centuries. We don't know what their ultimate fates really were, so it's possible this makes a lot of sense. Plus, the fact that we're talking about nearly a millennia of time travel might have exacerbated that as well. So we find out that Georgiou is dying, and apparently there's a 5% chance that if she goes to this particular planet with Burnham, she can be saved. The computer, which is merged with the sphere data, is the entity that provides this possible solution. And yeah, the fact that Discovery is merged with the sphere data and is becoming kind of sentient, basically I'm assuming we'll see what we eventually saw in Calypso with the Zora construct emerging from the computer. But yeah, she seems to have the crew's best interests at heart, and Georgiou as well. So, you know, provides this out for her. So they set off initially, and I really like this scene. Initially, Saru says that they shouldn't go because Discovery is needed to deal with the Emerald Chain. Vance kind of sidesteps Saru and countermands that and says, you know, Discovery has permission to go and take Georgiou to this planet. What follows is a really great scene between Saru and Vance, and it really talks about leadership and the qualities that make a good captain. And I think Vance had some really great advice for Saru, saying that, you know, you have a crew member who's drowning, and if you let them drown, the rest of the crew will never trust you. And it seems like, as he says, he's speaking from experience, having made many mistakes in his past. And I really appreciated that. It was a really great moment for Vance. I feel like he's been, I wouldn't say one-dimensional, but we haven't seen a lot of different sides of him and connected to his humanity like we do in this scene. So that was really nice to see, and kind of him warming up and being a good commanding officer, a good admiral. I really appreciated that. So some other things that happen in this episode before we get to kind of the main plot that I want to talk about. We learn about the ship that's in the Nebula, and surprisingly, I was wrong, and a lot of people were wrong. It's not the Discovery as seen in Calypso that is in the Nebula, but a Kelpian ship, apparently. And there's a lovely scene where Saru sees the distress call from a Kelpian, and just the look on his face, the elation at seeing another of his species, even though it's, you know, from a distress call that's hundreds of years old or over 100 years old. It was still a really lovely scene, really nice to see. I thought that was great. So going into this, I thought, you know, we would find that it was the Discovery, like a duplicate Discovery or a time loop Discovery or something stuck in the Nebula that would lead us to the whatever caused the burn. And I got to say, I'm thankful that that's not the case. I'm really glad that they're not going in that direction. I don't necessarily want Discovery or Burnham to be at the absolute center of everything. And if we found out that they were the cause of the burn, I think I would have lost my damn mind because, you know, enough of that. Enough of Discovery being at the center of everything. I can forgive it a few times, but you know, if it just happens again and again and again, it gets very tiresome. So I'm very happy to see that that's not where it went. If it had gone that way, there were several ways I thought that would be really interesting, but I'm glad that it seems to be something else entirely. And the Calypso question is still kind of hanging in the air as to how that all comes to pass. I'm sure we'll find that out at some point, but it looks like this was a bit of a false alarm. So we get another scene that I want to talk about between Book and Saru. And in this case, this advances Book's story a little bit. We know from last week that he had decided to kind of stick around and help Discovery in their mission, the Starfleet mission that he's come to appreciate. Saru doesn't immediately welcome him into the fold, however. He's given a chance to prove himself. Book has his contacts through the courier network and that sort of thing, but, there's Starfleet protocol that Saru wants to follow, and that's a little bit of an impediment, it seems, to having Book go off on his own and be a kind of rogue element. So my prediction is that Book will prove himself in some way and prove to be a really valuable resource for Discovery and Starfleet, and that will eventually happen. But we see the seeds for that planted in this episode, so hopefully we see more of that in the future. So here we get to the meat of the episode that a lot of people are talking about, and Georgiou and Burnham beam down to this planet that they've gone to, and this is the place where they've been told that Giorgio has a chance at survival. She's almost certainly dead, but there's a 5% chance that if she goes to this planet and finds this life form or whatever it is, there's a chance she could survive. And in this really crazy moment, Burnham's scanning and says, "I found a life form," or something like a life form, and they turn around. There's this guy, Carl, sitting there, smoking a cigar with a little hat and a door in the middle of a field. There's so much speculation as to who this character is, what exactly Carl is. I've seen tons of theories out there, of course. The one that immediately comes to mind is Q. Is he a member of the Q continuum? Putting that aside even, I've got to say, this appearance of Carl and his demeanor and how he acts, is this not the most Star Trek thing I think that Discovery has ever done? Like, think back to original Star Trek and how crazy go nuts that show was. We had the amusement park planet in Shore Leave, we had Trelane, we had like swords appearing in Day of the Dove. The whole original series is filled with like whimsical beings doing crazy things, and Jack the Ripper and all this crazy stuff. And even when you get to the Next Generation, you have Q. Like, John Delancey as Q is a ridiculous character, and ridiculous in the greatest sense of the word. I don't dislike Q. I love Q. I love TNG. I love TOS. Some of that stuff was very out there, crazy, supreme being, godlike abilities, all of that stuff. Since then, it's been like crazy, like science fiction ideas and stuff, but this kind of whimsical dude sitting in the middle of a field wearing a coat and smoking a cigar, that felt so original, like OG Star Trek to me. So this was great. Carl, I love this character. I think he was really good, really top part of this episode for me, and I just like immediately was smiling at this character. Could be a Q. That's an interesting speculation. Another speculation I've seen, and I really like this, is he possibly a personification of the Guardian of Forever? The Guardian of Forever, from the original series episode The City on the Edge of Forever, as well as seen in the animated series episode Yesteryear. It's a time portal that allows people to travel back and forth through time, which we kind of see in this episode, right? So Georgiou passes through this doorway and goes back in time to the mirror universe. So she crosses universes as well, but she goes back to a previous point in her life, which we'll get into. But the other thing, and I was floored when I saw this, blew my mind, the newspaper that Carl holds, the name of the newspaper, the Star Dispatch, I believe, is the same as the newspaper from City on the Edge of Forever that reported the death of Edith Keeler / the alternate history of Edith Keeler. And there's also like a little Easter egg referring to Edith Keeler's mission in the soup kitchen and homeless shelter that she ran in that episode is referenced on part of this paper. So I don't know. Those are pretty big clues, I think. They could just be little Easter eggs that were put in there, but I feel like that's a big clue as to what this is. There's also the preoccupation that Carl has with questions. And if you remember the original series episode, the Guardian of Forever lay there dormant. It sat there unactivated and unresponsive until Spock asked a question, and it came to life and said, "A question for, millions of years since long before your sun burned hot in space, I have awaited a question," or something along those lines. So this Carl character seems to have this kind of preoccupation with questions and answers as well. Might that be a little bit of a clue? I'm not sure, but I'm really excited. I hope we learn more about Carl. We don't see any more of him in this episode after Georgiou goes through the doorway. And after Georgiou goes through the doorway, we don't see any more of the Prime universe in this episode either. From here, she's back in the Mirror universe, and that's it. There's no further adventures with Discovery, and we're left with the cliffhanger ending. So, yeah, let's talk about Georgiou and the Mirror universe. I was really floored when this happened. I did not expect the episode to take this direction at all. I was very surprised. So, where is this episode going? It's interesting. I think that the Georgiou we see in the Mirror universe here, we see her juxtaposed against her past life, and we see how much she's changed. And I'm thinking this is very much the beginning of the Georgiou redemption arc. I love the references to what's going on at the time. We see the commissioning of the ISS Charon, the flagship that we saw in the season 1 Mirror Universe episodes of Discovery. The characters that we've come to know and love, we see their mirror counterparts. Most importantly, we see Mirror Burnham. So we get to meet Mirror Michael Burnham for the first time. This was really fascinating. I thought it was great to see that counterpart. And I'm wondering if Georgiou's getting an opportunity to change her life, change history as it happened. It seems like that's what she's trying to do. She says at the end of the episode that, I've seen how this plays out once. From this point forward, it's unwritten. It's completely different now. So I don't know if she's actually back there, actually changing history, or if this is all in her mind or some sort of illusion or something like that. I'm not sure, but this is a really compelling story. And again, nowhere at all that I thought this episode was going to go. This season has taken a complete left turn that I did not foresee. So kudos to the Star Trek writers for crafting a story that has me just completely enthralled, on the edge of my seat, and wondering where the heck it's going to go next. We've got lots of mentions of Lorca. I do wonder if we're going to see him in the next episode. I kept expecting him to pop up just because of how many times he's being mentioned, because Lorca is engineering a coup against Georgiou at this period of time. So that was fun. And I just, even if they're just mentioning Lorca to make you think of Jason Isaacs, like, that's pretty cool. But I'd love to see him back, maybe as the Mirror Lorca at this time or something like that. Also, Captain Killy, I like it was clever. There was the foreshadowing when Georgiou mentions Killy at the beginning of this episode, and then we get to see her at the end of this episode, captain of the ISS Discovery. Great stuff. Mary Wiseman, wonderful actor. I love her portrayal of both the Prime Universe Tilly and the Mirror Tilly, who of course has the nickname of Captain Killy. So great stuff. Man, I have no idea where this is all going to go. I'm really excited. Are you as excited as I am about all of these developments? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you, of course, to the Patreon supporters for all of their help in bringing this video to you. I could not do it without you. Thank you so much. To everyone else, thank you so very much for tuning in this week and watching. I do appreciate that very much, more than anything else that any of you do. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, as always, live long and prosper. Stay safe and be well, my friends.